That's a terrible attempt at actually working that graphic out. Welcome, everyone, to a very different version of what would normally be at this point, spoiler warning, but is in fact this time round, Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure. And hopefully you're all looking forward to that one because it is a very special show, very little bit special guest with me that you may recognise while I'm trying to move faces around. You're a special guest, mate. You're on my channel. You're not actually in Nick and Tom's. This is not our normal show. Welcome, Nick Barbati. How are you?
Do I look good?
At the moment, I'm trying to fit your face in the right spot. So I'm going to go ahead and say, unfortunately not, because I'm not doing the best job I've ever done in my life. But slowly but surely we're getting there. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm great. It's a big week to be a wrestling fan. It's a fun week to be a wrestling fan. And, you know, I'm excited to talk all things SummerSlam. We got some other questions coming in and out of here. And I love being in this arena, Tom. I love hearing from the folks out there.
The folks out there, that would, of course, be the regulars who we're all familiar with. Good old, so many already in the chat saying hi. We have Brad Becker, we have Daniela, we have Dark Society, Daz Reynolds, Ed, who you may recall as well. Mick,
I love Ed.
Sai, a Spider Boss as well, jumping in the chat to say hi. Welcome, everybody. Great to see so many of you and so many familiar faces already. We are going to be going through quite a bit of talk about wrestling in general, SummerSlam, and, of course, all things considered indeed, because there is a lot of wrestling to cover basically at all times. We all know that there is always wrestling and you basically can't escape it. So Nick, we've taken a bit of a mailbag. We had a few questions in. We're also immediately getting questions in from the chat. Where would you like to start?
Well, let's start with the chat. I want to reward the folks who are signing in early.
Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got. The first question is immediately about SummerSlam, asking the question about Roman Reigns and Jay Uso. I kind of expected this one. I have put in the title about the predictions. We did discuss at length what we expect will happen in our prediction show that's already live now on Nick and Tom's on PWTorch's Dailycast. But Nick, run me through what you expect as regards Roman's chances of keeping hold of his championship.
Well, my opinion is evolving, I must say.
Oh, okay.
My opinion is indeed evolving. So if you listened to last week's Nick and Tom, you would know that I came tail in toe, defeated, that this was the end of Jey Uso. And I still think that's a very high possibility, but I'm about 60-40 Roman, whereas I was about 80-20 last week. There's just, listen, this is a real opportunity for WWE to really crown a star and have a suitable ending to this storyline. And honestly, Tom, there's not many guarantees you're going to have that again. You know, right now, Cody Rhodes is always a fabulous option for the future, right? Well, that's assuming everything goes well. You're assuming that he maintains his positioning with the fans, maintains health, maintains Roman's health, you know, all those other things. You know, this is a chance where you can make a Jey Uso while simultaneously down the line further making a Cody Rhodes. And I think it's an opportunity that I do think WWE sees in front of them. There was a clear moment, I think, last week that kind of opened my eyes. I referenced it to you. It was when Jay speared Roman. That was a visceral reaction from the crowd. Not just, you know, a great pop. It was a visceral yell. Like, yes, this is what we want. And it's my hope. It is my grand hope that, you know, things like using tribal combat, you know, that you said might be, you know, a sign for the future. Yeah. That could still be a sign down the future when Solo challenges Jay. I'm not convinced Roman's going to be around all that much longer. I think this is Jay's moment, and I'm getting closer and closer to making a full-blown prediction in that way. Aren't you shocked?
I am. Also, I've not considered Solo versus Jay.
There you go. That's why I'm here.
That does change things up in my head, because that could well be a WrestleMania match worth the watching as well. Interesting. We have more questions coming in, and I'm going to bombard you a little bit here. Spider Boss is also asking, what do you think about WWE cutting 2 women's matches from the SummerSlam card? Now, this is referring to 2 matches which were not officially announced for SummerSlam: Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Rodriguez and Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus. We saw, in fact, Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus on Monday Night Raw instead, and it looks like it will not now make the SummerSlam card. Do you have a take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that once they committed to having Ronda versus Shayna, that was already locked in. It was locked in earlier. It's weird that match is taking place and Becky versus Trish is not. Yeah. But I do think from a match enjoyment perspective, a show enjoyment perspective, I'm glad they're not on the card. I think Rhea's going to find her way on the card. first of all. But I think having her in there with Raquel would have been unnecessary. Now, there's a time, maybe a couple years ago in WWE, where both those matches would have been on and the show would have gone 5 hours.
Yeah.
But I am glad they're making these trims. I'm very, very happy with this decision. And I think Becky versus Trish has lost a lot over the course of the months, and that's what happens.
Yeah, the heat really isn't there at the moment, especially with Zoe Stark stepping in as she has. There have been rumours of an injury to Becky Lynch, which also could be a factor here, well worth the considering. It may be that she's been a little more protected at the moment, though there are just rumours at this point. A name you may recognise, Sean, jumps in to say, what is up my favourite guys, Nick and Tom? Can't stay on long, but do you think Jay gets it done? Now, we have covered that, and I'd imagine Sean's satisfied with that, but he also thinks Cody has to be the one to beat Roman. Now,
But why? But why is my question to there, Tom? Sorry for cutting you off, but like it's enough. It's enough with the Cody of it all. Cody can still simultaneously go up against Roman Reigns one day, and he can still go against anyone else for that championship and finish the story. Those things are not mutually exclusive to just him beating Roman right now with this championship reign. If this reign is about setting things up for the future, there is a possibility that all things get set up just in a different way than what you expect. So I don't think Jay is done. I think that there are things that are worth taking into consideration. I've said this to you for a while.
Yeah.
Jay Uso is in fabulous shape. He is got that look in his eye that he's got support backstage. Something feels like, it's behind him. There is a wind to his sails, and you can't negate that. Like, there is clearly something there. And I think that, there is, if you look at the aggressive WWE premium live event schedule coming up, are you sure Roman's going to be there? We don't really know this. This is a chance of setting the deck for the future. And Roman can come back, and Roman can, do all these other things. But especially when you're looking at where Roman fits in the WWF historical numbers, if we're using Universal Championship as a world title, what's the benefit of holding on to this? It's not going to necessarily break the Hulk Hogan record anytime soon. No. And so, that's a year out. So I don't know. That doesn't seem so exciting to me. But as I've said before, and I'll say it again, the Roman Reigns character started in the summer and will end in the summer. That's my prediction, and that's my desire. It is not a WrestleMania storyline.
Roman certainly doesn't look like he's being advertised for many of the premium live events coming up. He's not appearing on many posters. There are rumours of a break. And given his limited date contract, if it was, for example, a 3-year contract, it would now be over. Because he did sign that upon returning, or at least that's what the rumours suggest.
Tom, I had another aha. I was watching Raw, okay? The first. Can't you see Jay versus Logan Paul?
I'm interested now you said it.
So, no, what I'm saying is there's more opportunities than you might initially think,
yeah.
Right? There are more opportunities than, and I still say, I've said to you before, I think Jay versus Cody is a real deal opportunity.
I don't necessarily think Jay would have a long title reign, but I certainly think, and you're absolutely right, there are lots of possibilities for it, which will help him to evolve away from Jimmy and try and get to the level. I don't think he'll ever get to the level of a Roman Reigns. I don't think that's really the character that he would play. But that's not a bad thing. Not everyone can be Roman Reigns. At the moment, to be honest, basically since the days of Stone Cold Steve Austin, there hasn't been anyone of this level. Even John Cena, I think, struggled to get this one memorable championship reign. Maybe if Cena had turned heel, who knows? Raymond Sheets is asking, for SummerSlam, do you think there'll be Money in the Bank cash-ins? The current briefcase holders are Damian Priest and Io Sky. We did discuss Damian Priest briefly and the possibility that he would get involved in the match between Seth Rollins and Finn Balor. But do you think Io Sky could get involved here?
I actually think there's more of a possibility for Io Sky to cash in than I do Damian Priest. Now, here's why. I think there is something, like you talk about finish the story. I'm so sick of that phrase. There is something finish the story-ish about Finn Balor having, another short reign that, is ruined at SummerSlam and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's also something like kick in the teeth of longtime fans who supported like a hard worker that I'm not sure fits Triple H's style. I could be wrong, but it just something about that seems a little dirty pool to me. There is something trappy about the Bianca Belair Charlotte Flair and an Asuka match, in which I think Io Sky could be a really exciting alternative as a way to end that match.
True.
Create a branch off feud with Belair and Flair, and then have her go with Asuka moving forward. But I don't know. Tom, I think we're going to have to send this show in early if we're going to be doing this much SummerSlam talk.
Fair. We'll work it out. After all, there's going to be SummerSlam talk. SummerSlam's upcoming. There are still going to be plenty of questions. I'm interested to hear people's opinions as to the whole Jey Uso of it all, to be honest. But here's Ed with a question in no relation whatsoever to SummerSlam. You may remember Ed.
I love Ed.
Thoughts on Paul Heyman calling himself the greatest manager of all time? And when asked about Bobby Heenan saying, all in character, screw him, he's dead.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I watched that today. Tom, you know this. I don't like certain things that I think cross lines. I am a prude. I use my word prude, but this reminds me of stuff that we've talked about MJF saying, things that I think are there's just certain things that shouldn't be added to the lexicon. I just don't. What benefit did that do? Nothing. It didn't add more heat to him. In fact, if anything, I think it just was a very negative moment that made you as a wrestling fan go there's no other sport where people would talk about each other like that. And I don't think that's fun.
No, I agree with that. I did feel he went too far, which is annoying because I do feel he's on that bracket of quite possibly the best of all time. But maybe respect the people who you grew up watching.
Yeah.
Went a bit too far for me personally.
Can I go to some questions from Sai that Sai submitted to us?
Absolutely, you can.
So Sai is basically ghost producing the show in many ways. Dominic Mysterio has come out of nowhere to find the kind of heat that experienced pros would kill for. Can you pick a name out of thin air who could even come close to that, or who would at least surprise us, who isn't currently getting much attention? So I guess this means to almost pick a name that hasn't experienced getting this heat. So when I first read this, I was going to say, honestly, I've said this before, Dominic's rise mirrors the initial rise of Vicky Guerrero back in the day, who I think you weren't watching live at the time,
I was
Tom.
Not, no.
It's to see how Vicky's character evolved would not actually take into account truly the amount of heat that she got when she first came out. But you're talking about someone who has potential to have a rocket attached to them and get nuclear heat. Let me think for a minute. Any names come to you?
There's a couple of names that do come to mind. I think Chad Gable could certainly reach that level if given the right amount of exposure. I think there are other people, Madcap Moss, if given the right exposure. But if you want to talk about someone nobody's talking about, let's see what happens when they bring Shane McMahon back.
I would. What do you mean? You think he would get nuclear heat to come back?
Shane McMahon.
Shane McMahon, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
It's Shane McMahon.
I think it's possible that a heel Bianca Belair really sets the world on fire.
A heel Pat McAfee?
Yeah.
I think Logan Paul's doing very well.
But that gives some Bobby Heenan vibes to it. He actually kind of looks like Bobby. He could be Bobby Heenan's son.
That's a fair comment. Yeah, I get what you're saying there.
All right. The next question. Imagine CM Punk was fired today. Oh, Lord. I'm going to have a heart attack. Then called Vince and asked for a slot at SummerSlam. Vince tells you to book it. What would you do with him? There's a battle royal, right?
There is a battle royal. I know exactly what I would do.
What would you do?
I'd feed him to Karrion Kross.
Oh. Now, why would you say that?
Because I feel with the way he burned his bridges, you need to come in on your back. Even if immediately after that you're going to be taking on Cody Rhodes, you're going to be taking on Seth, make a statement. Make an immediate statement that you're here for the next generation. Feed him to Karrion Kross.
All right. Well,
Kross could really use it.
That would not be where I would be. I actually think I would put him in there with Dominic.
Okay.
We talk about nuclear heat. I think you have to if you're a smart business person, you have to maximize the moment, get him the moment. You're going to get an incredible heat, filled arena from Dominic. That's what I think you should do. I think that's actually not a bad idea, right?
Yeah. We have a question from Noob & Co. saying, are both Asuka and Rhea Ripley's title runs already disappointing? Now, personally, I'm not going there with either. I don't feel Rhea Ripley has been up against top quality opponents, but there is kind of two Rhea Ripleys at the moment. As regards Asuka, it's only just started, and she's already in there with Bianca Belair and Charlotte Flair. So honestly, I'm pretty happy with that.
Wait, there's Muppets on our logo. I just noticed that.
if you just looked at the screen. Once again, Sai, who's in many ways producing this show, has created a graphic featuring the Muppets. I've sent the Muppet and this entire overlay twice to Nick. He's complimented it several times.
I did not see the Muppets.
And did not see the Muppets.
I did not see the Muppets. You know, my eyes went right. I don't know why. Where my are they disappointing? I don't think Asuka's is disappointing. I think Asuka is serving a classic champion heel championship reign. So that's not all that disappointing. Rhea is, it's hard to classify her as a disappointment when she is just at such a star level that she is. Yes, it would be better for her to have better opponents. And I think that day is going to come very soon. But yeah, the reign itself, sure. I guess you can call it a disappointment, but she's not in a bad way. That's where I would say.
Connected to this, Spider Boss says, what do you think about Rhea Ripley messing with the men's division instead of defending her title?
No, I don't like it. Stop.
I think it's linked. I think they're essentially keeping her on TV when they know there's not many championship challenges for her. So I value it, to be fair.
You think that she should go up against the men?
No, I think they're keeping her on TV, so I think it's a good place for her to be at the moment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I'm okay with that. I thought they wanted her like intergender matches.
Oh, no, I'm not sure on that one, but...
Oh, listen, I love the linkage with her and Dominic and serving as a proper member of, you know, the valet role, if you would, to Judgment Day. That all works beautifully. She's navigating both worlds, and that she's doing so beautifully. And there's something to be said for, you know, that she's dedicated her time to Judgment Day has strengthened the other wrestlers in that roster.
Absolutely. Sean says, what do you think about the triple threat? The build's been rough, and I feel like Charlotte might win, but I'm not sure either way. Personally, I've gone with Asuka for this one, because I do feel the story's about Bianca and Charlotte. I feel Asuka's been sort of left in the cold with this build. Nick, your take?
Yeah, I think there's a real chance that Io Sky cashes in and then sets off two separate feuds, because it is awkward, it is odd, and I think it's, as I've talked before, I don't enjoy the timing of Charlotte versus Belair right now, but it's like almost unavoidable. How do you avoid having, you know, moving fully into that lane? Yeah, but I don't think you can ever discount Charlotte winning a championship. I think that's clearly there's an agenda there to get her to a certain amount of title reigns, an agenda that I fully endorse.
I've said for a while, and I still fully believe, that Charlotte Flair will be the one to dethrone Ric Flair when it comes to total number of world championships. She seems to get closer every day.
Yeah. I got to tell you, Tom, I'm looking at my screen. I'm a 10.
You're enjoying it?
Yeah, you're like a 6.5.
I'll take it. Is it nice having your name in a star?
Honey, I've had my name in stars long before I did this show.
Also, I'd just like to say, I always thought our Muppets would be the other way around.
Well, no, you're the taller one. You got the rounder face.
I have the rounder face, sure, that's how this works. Sure. Spider Boss is definitely sensing a theme. Do you think Becky Lynch should be the one who beats Rhea Ripley?
I don't care about... Ugh. Yes. I think Becky... Let me say this. Becky Lynch should be Rhea Ripley's first big feud. Yeah. Obviously she's had a legacy of matches with Charlotte Flair. I actually wouldn't even call that a great feud. They barely had a feud, I felt like, going into WrestleMania. Yeah. But I do think that there is, you know, a story to tap in with Becky Lynch that could be an excellent feud.
Connor's making a suggestion that SummerSlam could end with Roman sticking with his cheating ways and having the tribal chiefdom essentially stolen away from him. Now, personally, I don't see that. It would be anticlimactic and certainly not good for Jay. Do you think there's a possibility that Roman essentially loses his position in the family?
I'm not understanding it. What does that mean?
So Connor has said, what are your guys' thoughts on Roman winning at SummerSlam but not winning with respect? As it's tribal combat, the elders take the chieftain away to lead to a rematch.
Well, that's a way of splitting the difference. I think there's a lot of possibilities here. We've seen Roman Reigns matches ended in disappointment. Look at Clash of the Castle. I'm not just talking about like the result of that match, but how odd they've chose to like end it with a song. Then we saw WrestleMania. They had no problem ending that on like a real downer note. Yeah, I mean, those are real possibilities of being replicated again. It's always there. So things feel differently with this one. In that I think, especially with WrestleMania, people were so convinced that, and we included, that Cody was going to win. That I don't know. It was just such cold water thrown in her face. I don't think it would feel that way with Jay, but you have to be, Tom. I've said this to you before many times actually, as you know, I've said on the show that has become the common accepted truth is you can eventually just burn out houses by just putting too much heat on a heel. We saw that with the NWO, and PWTorch covered that very, very well in its archives back at the time. And I think you have to be cautious about doing that again.
I think that's fair. You definitely run that risk with Roman because he's burned a lot on the way. A lot of people who are at least close to challenging either aren't anywhere near anymore or simply aren't in the company anymore. I'm thinking of, for example, Cesaro, Daniel Bryan, who are no longer with them. When it comes to the Demon King, we haven't seen the Demon King since, apart from this year WrestleMania with Edge when it also lost. So the Demon King really sea change in the overall character since returning, and I do think Roman did quite a bit of damage there. What I will say, and I want to pull you out of the fire a little bit on this one, I don't think you were ever particularly convinced that Cody was winning. I think I just broke you down a little bit.
Yeah, and just the spirit of it. Like, I mean, it was WrestleMania. It was Cody, coming in hot. I would have to go back and listen to it. I know my jaw was open when he lost.
Yeah, which I think is definitely fair. Do you want to head back to the emails?
No, I want to see this. Eric says, Nick, who would you like to retire Edge? I say Dom. I think that's an interesting choice. And, WWE has a lot right now, a lot of choices with Dominic. And at some point, you have to wonder if they're going to pivot to actually put some more respect on his name, if you would. I would say Finn Balor, though. I really, really would. I think even though they didn't – I feel like they never truly had a great moment in their feud. But I would like to have Finn Balor have that little, head on his mantelpiece, if you would. Like, I just think I like that. I mean, there's others that make sense. I think Seth Rollins will always make sense given that their long extended feud. Anybody else that sticks out to me? No one from the bloodline, I don't think.
For me, you've hit the nail on the head. I think I'd keep the bloodline as far away from Edge as possible, and I think Finn Balor has kind of had his moment. There are other people I feel who are developing who might be able to take that crown. I'd look at someone like a Sami Zayn or a Kevin Owens, to be honest, given the heritage, as it were. But I think Dominic is the perfect one. He's been made in many ways by Edge with the initial heel turn, and I do think he'd get the most benefit from it. It would be certainly, for me, someone of that level who would be the one to do it. I don't necessarily see anyone higher up the card taking that spot, so while Damian Priest would benefit, I don't necessarily see that one happening either. Though I'd imagine a few people thinking Bray Wyatt would also fit the bill.
Oh, no. But I think it is it would feel like a better version of Baron Corbin beating Kurt Angle. But
yeah, I get what you're saying there. Would be just
all right,
a little bit awkward.
Let's go back to Sai. If Bobby Heenan were around today, only slightly less likely than Punk. That's funny. Who would you pair him up with? Or if not, Heenan, an 80s, 90s manager of your choice. Who would you put Bobby Heenan with?
This is an interesting one because there are some very good talkers who I'd want him to stay far, far away from. And there are people who I feel it would change the character to pair with, but I would still put him with Gunther.
Oh, really? Yeah, that makes sense given some of his, legacy wrestlers. I would say Austin Theory. I think he is someone, especially with when he introduced Lex Luger as the narcissist, I think he has a history of being able to, fawn all over somebody while also, creating a character with their image, but then bring out the personality with him. I think that would be a really great fit. Almost like wasn't he with Rick Rude too? I mean, it was all perfect. I think Theory would fit very nicely within that pocket.
Theory really does when you consider the build and general history of the people that he's worked with. I think that would fit absolutely perfectly. Spider-Boss suggests Grayson Waller retiring Edge would benefit Grayson in the main roster. Absolutely it would, and they've already said at least a little bit of groundwork for that I think would be a very positive thing. We are being asked, Nick, where do you see Mercedes money landing, WWE or AEW?
Probably AEW. I don't think that there's a need for her in WWE, nor do I think the WWE experience would be satisfying for her. I think one of the things that has repeatedly, been the hindrance to that relationship is the lack of WWE's ability to tell strong stories at the mid-card level with the women's wrestlers. And I think that that is what makes things feel like such a come down when they're not actually in the title picture. And I think that ebb and flow has always been damaging to their relationship and would continue to be. So AEW, I think, is a way to, play to her from a financial standing and also from an ego standing. She would come in and be the top player.
I completely agree with that. She's only very recently left WWE in difficult terms. I don't necessarily see her going back anytime soon. AEW for me presents a strong platform, could also keep working with New Japan and Japanese promotions like Stardom, which she obviously is a fan of, otherwise she wouldn't be actively doing so. So I do feel that would make a bit more sense to me. Plus, as you say, it would certainly be a sound financial decision given the amount of money that's currently being suggested for some of the big names going to AEW. Dylan has made a suggestion which I'm finding interesting. Dylan essentially suggesting that we could see the Demon King appearing at SummerSlam. This would then echo back to that 2016 match between Seth and Finn Balor, where the Demon King essentially debuted on the main roster. Now, I can't see this primarily because, in my opinion, there's going to be a cash-in here. What do you think?
I don't know. I think there's a Finn Balor win. I don't think it's a Demon King relation. I really don't. I think there needs to be some decisions made long term about the Demon King, and the Demon King needs to represent certainly, various things. One of which it needs to win. Second of all, it really needs to hit a crescendo in a storyline to then allow that. And I think that while this storyline is reaching its end, it doesn't feel like a real peak. I think Finn Balor is the character in this fight, and I think Finn Balor is the one who needs to get himself out of it.
Martin says, for me, Jay should win the title, as this makes his pin at Money in the Bank mean more. If he loses, that makes the Money in the Bank win a fluke, and kind of like Goldberg in WCW with Nash, meant nothing as it was booked badly. Now, I personally do not completely understand what you're saying about Goldberg and Kevin Nash. From what I can tell, Kevin Nash beat him, and there wasn't really a recall there. I don't think it was necessarily a fluke. Would you be able to clarify on that one, Nick? And when it comes to win at Money in the Bank, do you like the idea of it being a fluke, or do you want it to mean more?
Well, I think it all wraps in the package of something feeling like a consolation prize. So, yes, Nash won at that Starrcade, but then he didn't have the title within a week, which was annoying. It's where things not only land in the moment, it's how you look at them in the past. I think it would be wonderful for Jay's pin at Money in the Bank to not feel like a consolation prize. I think that's important. I think the double win actually then creates a longer storyline of him being the kryptonite to Roman Reigns. And you can then revisit that in 3 years, 5 years, 1 year, 10 years, all those kind of things. I think that what fluke is to me when Lex Luger beat Hulk Hogan in WCW for that mini reign, those aren't fun. They just aren't fun. The in the moment they feel okay, but then you look back and you're like, oh, that didn't feel so good. And you don't want that for Jay. I think if this should be Jay's moment, it should come out swinging.
This is, of course, a mailbag show. Please do be getting your questions in so I can ask them of Nick, and, of course, so I can answer them myself. It's slightly different from usual spoiler warning where I try and answer every single question. I'm picking out the ones that I can to ask Nick, and, of course, he's also reading the chat to try and see if anything jumps out for something we've maybe not already answered. So please do get your questions in. Nick, anything further on the emails?
Yeah. What is, I'm going to just shorten this, your favorite hometown crowds?
Okay, so I'm from the UK. Mm-hmm. So we get the UK crowd, which for me are always a wonderful experience. I always love it when they're singing to Bayley. I think that's a wonderful thing and something that she can really hold on to, as it were. But when it comes to what we're seeing going forwards, I like Canadian crowds. When it comes to the United States audience, no city or town particularly jumps out to me. So I'm going to stick with Manchester, UK, because that's the most easily reachable for me.
I loved the San Juan crowd in Puerto Rico. I loved that show, and I thought they really showed it out. In America, I always thought Philadelphia always had this reputation, but I never actually thought it translated outside of the ECW arena stuff. I was never impressed. I was raised in the Philadelphia market. It never did much for me. I think MSG during really spectacular shows or really high profile shows, that's probably my favorite crowd.
WWE's gone to quite a few different countries, even just this year alone. Is there any particular countries you're excited to see them go to?
Like for the future, for them to go to?
Yeah.
Nothing stands out to me, quite honestly. I'd love to give you a better answer than that, but I really...
No, that's fine. I always think it's worth asking the question. Spider-Boss says, a question for Nick. Do you think Dominic Mysterio should improve his mic skills?
I think where he's at right now in life, the character he's playing fits. You know, I was reading an interesting thing. You know, I love the Godfather movies. I talk about them often. And, you know, many people are looking back at the Godfather Part 3 and looking at the character that Sofia Coppola played with very different lenses, because if you go back and when that character was portrayed in the early 90s, she was seen as being unrealistic, and, you know, people were bashing her acting and all that kind of stuff. But now, many years later, she lays with a certain level of awkwardness in her cadence as like a Ivanka Trump is the daughter. Yes. Yeah, she's the daughter. And now you can, like in the Kardashians, they all kind of have a similar style of speak. And I'm going somewhere with this is because Dominic kind of fits that unspectacular kid who has been, you know, a nepotism baby, you know, all that kind of stuff, who has that little bit of a SoCal accent to him. Like, I think it fits who he is right now. I don't think he needs to change much. Does that make sense?
It does. Honestly, I completely agree. Dominic Mysterio is doing extremely well right now with limited mic skills. He can improve on that while not really showing it, if you get what I mean. As a heel in general, wrestlers will have a more mundane moveset because you're not supposed to pop for them. You don't want a heel doing suicide dives because, well, then they become cool, and that's a bad thing for a heel. I think it's the same can be said with mic skills. It was one of the most difficult things about Kevin Owens as a heel. You didn't want to boo the guy. It was too entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Far too entertaining. I think about when Sami Zayn debuted the word Usi, and it undermined the entire moment. Personally, I like Dominic Mysterio as he is now.
Yeah, but there is something to the unspectacular kid. Like, there is something to that character. And I like... You know what I liked? People got to see me go on one of my tangents in real time. They didn't just have to listen to it.
Oh, right,
they got to see me go crazy. Yes. Did they? You don't even listen to me.
Yeah, I'm not really paying attention to anything you're doing, let's be fair. Dark Society is asking a question. Our favourite Roman Reigns match as Tribal Chief?
There's two. The Hell in a Cell with Jey Uso. I guess that was Uso. Classic. Reigns 2. And the triple threat at 37.
For me, as good as that Hell in a Cell I Quit match was, and the storytelling was amazing, the triple threat takes it. I also have a soft spot for Seth Rollins when he challenged Roman Reigns, and Roman just had to choke him out. The Shield entrance, it was a wonderful moment. But yeah, the triple threat with Edge and Daniel Bryan, the first time they were stacked and pinned, the fact that Jey Uso got involved immediately, there was no waiting around. They immediately took advantage of the no DQ, and Roman did stand massively tall at the end, despite rumours that, oh, Edge was going to do it. Oh, Daniel Bryan's going to do it. There was never a moment when I considered it, even for a moment. Roman ascended at that time and really did become everything that they were hoping for. For me, that was his best work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also, Logan Paul, I know you didn't see that match. That was a good one. You know, there's been some really good ones.
Spider-Boss is asking if Dominic Mysterio should stop doing Eddie Guerrero's moves. Hell no, he's a heel.
All right, Tom. Name a wrestler or personality who was A, criminally underrated. Go ahead.
Criminally underrated. That's difficult because typically the cream rises to the top. So I'm trying to think of someone who just didn't have the opportunity. And it's difficult at this point. Honestly, there are a few people I rate. I've always really rated Baron Corbin, as you know. I think Nikki Bella.
Oh, okay.
I think Nikki Bella was horrendously underrated, particularly after the renewing of the brand split in 2016. She really was a big help to that women's division. I also think she got some great work out of Ronda Rousey in the Evolution main event. I think she could have gone a lot further. She could really wrestle, and I really enjoyed her work.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little deeper. I think Sherry Martel is criminally underrated. I think she was the great female wrestler of our lifetime, of the previous eras, and I think she should be celebrated way more than she is, and I think she's criminally underrated because she was that good. Okay, a guilty pleasure of yours. Who was a guilty pleasure?
I'm going to have to stick to WWE because usually at this point I'd answer a New Japan wrestler that you're not going to know, who basically just tapes people to railings to win matches by countout. That's a guilty pleasure, and everyone knows what I mean.
Keep going.
If I'm going WWE, it's a lot more difficult because when it comes to guilty pleasures, mostly everyone's presented in a way that they are automatically basically lined up to pick up the win. I really like Johnny Gargano's work. I really enjoyed his work in NXT against Andrade. But if I'm saying guilty pleasure, it's basically any time Zelina Vega's on a microphone. Okay. I really enjoyed the early 2020 period when she basically ran the company in a silent arena because they just knew she was very good on the microphone and would control the spectacle.
Yeah, I would say mine would be, again, further in history, the Body Donnas, because I'm shamed for that. But I also think, and I've made a case for them in the past, that I think they were a bright spot of a not great necessary time in terms of athletic wrestling. I know the hair and everything, but I really enjoyed watching them. And I'll just jump a little ahead. Legitimately scary.
Okay, so my youngest really didn't like it when I introduced her to The Fiend.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But if we're going someone I actually would be scared of in real life, Randy Orton.
Oh, okay. I'm going to say Fiend, and I think Karma. When Karma was coming out, I don't know if you were watching in real time for that, Tom, but those were legitimately scary.
Yeah, I caught up since.
When she did I forget the name of the move, but when Michelle McCool screamed, or was it Maurice? Maurice, one of the Maurice, yeah. Maurice. Yeah, Maurice screamed. It was startling. That was like a horror movie.
Yeah, Michelle McCool not one to scream and run, I tell you that.
Yeah.
Dylan is asking about the SummerSlam start time. We will be starting our watch party of SummerSlam. That will just be myself. Nick, unfortunately, will not be joining me. That will be at midnight UK time, which is 7 p.m. Eastern time in the US. We will be starting with the pre-show so that we can run through all of the predictions before we get started. I'm not really hoping for it, but I did have a lot of fun during the Elimination Chamber pre-show where we just talked about crisps.
Okay.
It's funny what happened on stream. Nick, what's your favourite potato chip?
I like a sour cream and onion. No?
What?
You're talking about chips, right?
Yeah, and I'm just disgusted by the presence of you at the moment.
What, do you like salt and vinegar?
Salt and vinegar is the master race.
Okay. It hurts my mouth. All right, Tom. Fantasy book the next Mania main event 9 months out. Doesn't need an angle necessarily, just two names. So we're going to do a men and a women's because I want a women's main event.
Cool. So, most people, unfortunately, are fully aware of this already in the channel because I know where I want to go with this. I want Cody Rhodes versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. If I'm going women's, I love the idea of Asuka Io Sky. That's where I would go. But I think Rhea versus Bianca is a bigger draw match.
I would do Jay, Cody, and Charlotte Becky.
You do Charlotte Becky?
Yeah, I think that match is they need the... I know they had the big match at Evolution, but I think that is a match that at some point should be a main event to a WrestleMania.
We have two people who are backing you up on sour cream and onion.
Well, and you got Sean turning me and stabbing me in the back by saying he likes salt and vinegar.
Sean does like salt and vinegar. That's how it should be.
So Sean is never coming back on Nick and Tom's.
He's there right now. If Eric is fantasy booking, he says Cody versus Gunther and also Liv versus Rhea. What do you think of Liv Morgan? When she does return from injury, do you see her getting a big WrestleMania match?
I see her getting a big WrestleMania match. I don't want her to. Not personally. Not personally. If she does, God bless her. But that is not one that I would pick.
Anything more in the emails?
No, that's it. That's all. Worked shoot angles. Are they a good thing in 2023? Were they ever? Any great or terrible examples?
There were some good ones. I think back to The Miz and his Intercontinental Championship reign, his work with Daniel Bryan, I really enjoyed that. If we're going bad work, shoot basically anything that happened under Vince Russo in WCW and the powers that be. Do you remember the powers that be?
I didn't really watch that.
Good. Yeah, I really didn't enjoy that time. I've gone back to watch it, so I didn't watch it live. But it was an experience and not a particularly fun one. Do you have any takes on worked shoot matches?
I don't enjoy anything with that. The only one that ever caught my attention, I would say, as a youngster, was in WCW, the Kevin Sullivan, Brian Pillman stuff involving Nancy. But my brain does not enjoy that.
Raymond suggests that Matt Hardy versus Edge was great.
No, it was not.
Yeah, again, I didn't watch that live, so I tip my hat to you and your further knowledge.
You know what was I'll tell you one work shoot experience that I liked was the ECW One Night Stand, the reunion show where they had Paul Heyman confront the Invaders and use shoot kind of ish things. That worked for me because it was shoot enough to feel authentic, worked enough to still fit in the narrative of everything they were doing.
Dylan is saying, if you could pick any WWE legends to have a feud with top names such as Roman, Gunther, Cody, or Seth, who would you pick?
Like that are alive and still could go?
Historical legends of WWE.
Oh, okay. So give me one by one, each person. Okay. Roman or Seth, you said?
Roman was first.
Roman. I think there's a Roman versus Hulk Hogan, maybe. I mean, I'm not a Hulk Hogan fan, but when you think of characters going against each other, I think, Hulk Hogan, whether he was in his American Hero or NWO days, those would work. I think Steve Austin would be a better opponent for him than The Rock. I think Roman fits in that level of people, though. I think it needs to be Mount Rushmore. I wouldn't want to see Roman versus Undertaker. I wouldn't want to see him against Flair. Flair I would put up against Rollins. And The Rock, I wouldn't want to see Rock against either one of them.
I personally would go The Rock against Roman simply because of the bloodline ties. I think the story would be good. Hogan I would keep for Gunther. I think Hogan versus Gunther would be a match that really plays to the strengths of Hulk Hogan. And, would be a big slam, tell you that, because he'd probably win. One name you didn't mention there was Cody. Cody, I think, would do very well against a good Ric Flair.
Oh, yeah. I thought we were just sticking to the champions. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, not necessarily. Cody's been mentioned. Seth,
I want to see the Usos versus the Hart Foundation.
Oh, I'd love that.
Or the Rockers. That would be good.
Usos versus Rockers. You get quite a lot of good stuff out of that. Seth, I would put against Shawn Michaels, and I would never complain. Just know that would be fun.
I don't know about that. I liked Shawn with less people who were less like him.
Okay.
Shawn versus Gunther would really work for me.
That's a really good play. Because imagine Shawn selling Gunther's offense.
You got it. That's what Shawn was best at.
Yeah.
Shawn did not do much for me in the matching, high spots type thing.
Shawn was very good at getting beat up and making it look good. I think back to the first Hell in a Cell when he was just covered in blood. His job there was just to get beaten up and then to lay down while Kane did his thing.
Yeah.
And a great job he did. Sai says, funny, since I asked that question about worked shoots, WWE tried to work some reality in a couple of segments last night. The Ronda Shayna videos and Logan Paul's line to Ricochet on Samantha Irvine. Did you see the video for Ronda Shayna as of yet?
Not yet. I've heard it's great.
I also have not seen it yet. Apologies. We've both been working all day, so we haven't really had the opportunity to jump in as of yet. You'll certainly get our opinions on it as soon as we have opinions to share. There's a few people actually suggesting Shawn Michaels, Seth Rollins. So I suggest Gunther versus Mr. Perfect.
No.
No? Why not?
I just don't hold Kurt Hennig, in a level where he's like a dream opponent for me, right? Like when I think of people.
I think then we have run out of questions, so we're going to wrap it up. This has been Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure. You
didn't even give the people an opportunity to throw any last ones in, Tom.
Wow.
I'm here for these folks that are here.
Fine.
Go ahead.
Fine.
People, you have another minute. Keep going.
Fine. Spider Boss says, what do you think about how WWE's booked Damage Control?
I am disappointed that everything needs to have conflict. I think things were definitely thrown off by Dakota Kai's injury. I mean, as a unit, sure, with having Bayley be the leader, there was always going to be inevitably the point where she wanted to put her thumb down to keep the others down. That seemed reasonable. I have always thought, though, too, there was money left on the table with Damage Control having a real great match against Ronda and Shayna. I think that is something that should have been done.
True.
They should have really had better tag team women's matches in there. And I think they didn't do enough to really build up Bayley. They could have kept Bayley as the heel that needed the others to help her win. But in the process, I don't think they did that. Bayley came down a level on this one.
Spider-Boss also asked, do you think Mercedes Moné and Bayley don't get enough credit for what they did for the women's division?
Yes and no. I mean, I think they did Sasha, you're throwing me off on this one, did a lot initially with Charlotte, but I do think I think really things caught fire with Charlotte and Becky, respectively. Personally, that's my observation. And then carried into the new era by Bianca and Rhea. Now, Sasha was important to both of those groupings coming together. So, yeah, maybe she doesn't get enough credit.
There's a couple of suggestions for matches that are interesting. Raymond suggests Bret Hart versus Chad Gable.
Yeah.
Clinicians, certainly. And FDR suggests that Cody should be taking on, when it comes to legends, Triple H.
Now that fits.
That does definitely fit.
I don't enjoy watching Triple H matches. Outside of the year 2000, I could watch his matches all day. Anything after that didn't do much for me. How about, I know he's still active, but I would like to see Chris Jericho in there with any one of these people that we've mentioned. I think he fits all type of people. A younger Chris Jericho.
I'd love Jericho versus Grayson Waller at the minute.
See, no, that's not what I'm talking about. See, you took it sideways.
You say any of these young guys, and then you're like, but
no,
not that
I'm
one.
talking about the ones we talked about. I see him in there with Rollins, see him in there with Roman, see him in there with Cody especially. I think that would be good.
Yeah,
I see him in there with Gunther. I see him as a serious actor, not like what you're reducing him to.
Reducing him. Lovely. Powerpuff says, will Bray Wyatt return at SummerSlam?
Yes.
Ooh, bold claim. Eric asks, here's a question. Do the two of you think Asuka is a third wheel in the triple threat match?
Yeah, but that's intended, and that's okay.
I completely agree with that. All of the focus has been on Bianca and Charlotte. Asuka's been there, but she has a completely separate active storyline with Io Sky. Now, that does technically involve Bayley, but Bayley has her own completely separate storyline going on at the moment as well. So, Shopsy in that one. It's difficult because there is a lot going on at the top of the women's division in SmackDown, and Asuka, even though she's at the top of the women's division, kind of doesn't feel that way for me. Bianca Belair and Charlotte seem to be the actual top, based on what we're actually seeing at the minute. Couple more suggestions. Spider-Boss suggests Jericho versus Dominic.
Yeah.
Are you happy now for me to wrap up?
I sure am. I feel like we super served, which is what I'm here to do.
Are you here to super serve?
Yes.
We'll be sure to get a few more of these Q&As, mailbags in when it comes to future premium live events. We did quite a few before my break going to Paris, and unfortunately this is entirely on me for not essentially requesting them from Nick a bit more often. Hopefully, Nick, you had fun and we'll see a bit more of you. Ed did suggest earlier that people follow Nick on YouTube. He does have a YouTube channel, but also he has a Twitter channel. Nick, do you want to tell people where to find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Nicholas Barbati, Nicholas Barbati. And I admitted that I haven't been active on YouTube which is the same handle, at Nicholas Barbati, because I wasn't seeing a return on it and I wasn't getting much interaction. And the thing that was frustrating me was you need a certain amount of followers to go live. So until I have that, I'm not going live and I'm not recording stuff. So come see me, give me a reason to go live.
And how many people is that?
I forget. Was it 50?
I'm not entirely sure. I can look into it, but we'll see what we can do for you. Of course, you can find this live every single week on PWTorch's Daily Cast. We do Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure. Less mailbag, but more of a talk about where we are in wrestling and where we're going in wrestling if you want more Nick and Tom content. In the meantime, though, I want to say a massive thanks to everyone who's joined us here live on YouTube, the Tom Colohue channel. Thank you very much and goodbye.